When you're standing in the middle of your garage or spare room, eyeing that empty space and wondering whether it's worth turning it into a full-blown home gym, the hesitation is real. You've probably seen a dozen videos promising the ultimate all-in-one piece of equipment, only to end up with a bulky contraption that eats up the floor and still leaves you missing key movements. That's why I'm going to walk through the Mikolo strength training apparatus the way a buyer would, looking at the actual day-to-day experience, the hidden trade-offs, and whether it truly saves you money and space in the long run. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the biggest question most people have is, do you really need a combined Smith machine, power rack, and cable system in one footprint? If you're a beginner who's just getting into lifting and you only have room for a single piece of equipment, the appeal is obvious. You get a barbell path that's guided, a safe spot for bench presses, and a set of pulleys for rows or triceps extensions, all without hunting for a separate rack or cable tower. That convenience translates into fewer pieces to assemble, fewer bolts to tighten, and one less thing to move if you ever relocate. On the flip side, if you already own a sturdy power rack and a separate cable station, you might find the integrated design limiting because the Smith bar's fixed travel can feel restrictive for certain lifts like deadlifts or Olympic variations. In other words, the Mikolo is most valuable when you're starting from scratch and need a single, compact solution. Let's talk about space. The unit measures roughly the size of a standard power rack, but because the Smith guides are built into the uprights, you don't have the extra width that a freestanding Smith machine would add. In my own setup, I was able to park a fold-down bench inside the cage and still have a few feet of clearance on either side for a kettlebell swing or a set of dumbbells. If you have a ceiling height of at least 8 feet, you won't run into the top bar hitting the rafters during overhead presses. However, the cable pulley sits on one side of the frame, so you'll need a clear wall or a sturdy anchor point on that side. Otherwise, you'll have to improvise with a ceiling mount, which defeats part of the all-in-one promise. Now, the everyday usability. I set the machine up for a typical push-pull legs routine. For bench presses, the guided bar gave me confidence to push a few extra plates without a spotter because the safety catches are built into the vertical rails. The range of motion feels natural enough for most users, though the bar does travel on a fixed plane. So if you have any shoulder mobility issues, you might feel the bar scraping a bit more than a free weight bar would. When I switched to lat pull-downs using the cable, the pulley system provided smooth resistance, and the weight stack, though not disclosed in the spec sheet, behaved like a typical commercial gym pulley, which is reassuring. The only hiccup was the cable's length. It barely cleared the top of the rack when I set the pulley at its highest point, meaning you can't do very high pulls without adjusting the angle. Strength training enthusiasts often ask about safety, especially when you're training alone. The Mikolo's integrated safety arms lock automatically if you let go of the bar, and the bar can be racked at any height, which is a plus for squat variations. I did notice, however, that the safety arms are made of a thinner gauge metal than the main uprights, so they feel less robust under a heavy load. For most home users, this isn't a deal breaker, but if you plan on squatting 300 pounds or more, you might want to double-check the maximum load rating in the manual before committing. One practical strength that stands out is the cable system's versatility. With a single set of pulleys, you can perform rows, face pulls, triceps pushdowns, and even cable curls, all while staying within the safety cage. This eliminates the need to buy separate cable stations or attach extra plates to a barbell for isolation work. In a real-world scenario, I was able to finish a full upper body workout in under an hour, moving seamlessly from barbell bench presses to cable flies without walking across the room. That fluid transition is exactly what busy people look for when time is at a premium. On the downside, the machine's weight, while not listed in the prompt, ends up being substantial enough that moving it once installed is a serious project. If you ever decide to reconfigure your gym layout, you'll need a couple of helpers and possibly a dolly. The assembly instructions are fairly detailed, but the process can take a full weekend for a DE-oriented user. This isn't a surprise for any all-in-one system, but it's worth highlighting because the initial excitement of just plug it in often fades when you're wrestling with bolts and levelers. Who should buy?